still achieve your goals without being too hyper focused on others and what others are doing. Because ultimately, there's going to be someone that might just be having the craziest day ever and set a world record, and that doesn't really diminish what you did if you have those goals set and you swung for the fences and achieved what you were supposed to. So.
Welcome back to the Racing Time Podcast. I'm Nathan, your host, and today I'm sharing my interview with Christian Allen. Christian is a husband, father, part owner of a local running shop, and professional runner for Nike. He has a handful of notable past accolades, including being recognized as a two-time NCAA All-American and victories at races like the Speed Goat 50K, the Bentonville Dirt Circus, the Broken Arrow Ascent, and even finishing first overall in the Cirque Series. This year, he unfortunately had to drop out of the Boston Marathon due to a nagging injury, but since then, he is off to a hot start. He took first at the UTMB Trail de Celt 50K, where he won by a mere 11 seconds. He also recently won the Twisted Fork 15K in Park City, Utah for the second year in a row. Last weekend, Christian finished third at the Sunapee Scramble Downhill and hopes to keep up his hot streak at the Broken Arrow Ascent and 23K. You will note in our conversation that as a runner, Christian is somewhat unique. Where most athletes double down in one discipline or surface type, Christian runs at a competitive level on both the road and trails. He's hoping to use his versatility as an edge in his ultimate goal to reach the LA 2028 Olympics. On a final note, Christian is an amazing teacher. As I've gotten to know him, the thing that sticks out the most, and what you will hopefully note in my conversation, is how knowledgeable Christian is in every aspect of running. This episode is full of great advice for the everyday runner. I also appreciated that Christian continually framed his ambitious pursuits with a perspective of maintaining balance and focusing on what matters most in life. I hope you take away as much from this conversation as I did. Okay, Christian Allen, welcome to the Racing Time Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on. So let's just get right into it. I'm really curious to jump right into some fun conversations because this week, actually, you're coming off of a win. You ran the Trail de Celt in France. Hopefully I said that correctly. And for anyone who's kind of like me, who really passively follows sport, because I have little kids and basically Blue is the only thing that's on my TV at this point. I really didn't know what this race was about. So in knowing you and kind of following you ahead of this interview, I obviously followed the results and I learned that it's a 50K race. So for, again, Americans, primarily it's 30 miles. And there's just north of something like 5,400 feet of elevation gain. And you won this race by a mere, I think the official website is 11 seconds. And for context, your grade adjusted pace was like a 5:37 split. So you were absolutely flying for 30 miles uphill, and you won by a pretty slim margin. Can you just dive into how this race went? Because with that small of a gap, it seems like it was an absolute battle, like an absolute grind. Can you just break down what happened?
Yeah, it was a great, super fun race. I got a race against a Frenchman named Benjamin most of the day. We just kind of went back and forth. The race kind of opened up. There's kind of like a pack of five of us that kind of went out. And after about, 6, 7 miles, slowly it just faded down to just us two. And we kind of kept just pushing the pace back and forth. And I would lead for a couple miles, and then we go to an aid station, then he had maybe a better transition, then he led for a while, and then I would lead again, and then we probably changed the leads like maybe 6, 7 times, it seemed like, throughout the race, and we had different times where we'd lead and then kind of try to push to see if you could break the guy, and then we always just kind of reeled each other back in, and then towards the end with about I guess with like the last 5K or so, he pushed and kind of like took the lead, and then I matched and covered it. And then with a little less than a mile, there's this slight like uphill onto a road, and then you kind of curve around. You like you have this cool overlook that sees down into the city of Auvergne where you finish, um, and and then it's just all downhill on the roads to the through the city to the park that you finish at. And I pushed on that little like uphill, and I noticed I was like kind of gapping him a little bit, and then I just kind of kept pushing. I was like, oh, like maybe because I had a few times and we both had a few times where we'd like kind of push and drop the guy by like, 10, 15 meters or 20 meters maybe. And then they come back. But I kind of pushed and then I noticed he wasn't like really covering it. So I just kind of kept pushing. And then I was like, dude, I think I actually broke him. Like, so I was like, let's just keep the gas. So like with a mile left to go, I just kind of kept the pedal down and was able to break him just enough and end up getting the win. But it was a super fun race, just super back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed like a formidable opponent, if you will, like someone to race. What is it like being that close all day? Are you guys talking, or are you just at that point like? I mean, because it's probably not like a road race where like there's a little bit of working together. There's not really drafting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like there's not. Yeah, how is that race dynamic different, and what is it like for 30 miles being switching positions so often?
Yeah, I think on one hand it was a breath of fresh air or relief to me because I knew I needed to finish top three to qualify for the big UTMB final or OCC, which is in August. As I hadn't had the qualifications for that race yet, so that's why I kind of went and chased this race out in France.
Hmm.
And after it dwindled down to just us two within like 5, 6 miles of the race, I was like, oh, like as long as I don't drastically blow up and I run within myself, I don't like overdo it, then like I've easily got that qualification. But also you never want to settle for just like, hey, I qualified. So like throughout the whole day, I'm just like trying to like, okay, like I feel calm, I feel smooth, like just stay relaxed. And you obviously have those like constant battles of the mind where you're like, oh shoot, like he's probably gonna outkick me, or like maybe he's feeling better. And we were chatting throughout the day. I think even with like 5 miles left to go, I kind of pushed and then he took the lead, and then he says oh no, it's coming to the last aid station. So at the last aid station, you have about 4 miles left, about 8 kilometers. And we just kind of, after he caught up to me, after I went to the aid station, we were chatting, and he just said something like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm feeling great. How you feeling?" And like in the back of my mind, you're like, "Oh, dude, I could be done right now." Like, you're really tired, but like I was trying to make it sound like I sounded really relaxed, like this was just a walk through the park. But he also sounded really good, and so it was like a little hard to like tell, like, okay, how good is he really feeling? How good am? But every time we kind of interacted, I was like just trying to keep it like, oh yeah, like this is just another run out in the park, so to speak. But he also sounded really good, so I think we were trying to play that like psychological game, psychological warfare, so to speak, back and forth. But yeah, it was super fun. He was really nice. After like a couple miles of the race, he was like, "Ah, sorry, we all just speak French," and because all the French guys were speaking back and forth, I was like, "That's all right. I need a, I probably had to study some French or something. I would love to learn like French and Spanish would be like the two I'd love to learn next, but just every time I have free time with my busy life, it's the last thing I think about is maybe studying another language or something." But
Yeah, yeah, we'll get into your quite busy life a little later, because it's definitely, yeah, you've got a lot going on. Really quickly, do you find that in trail running, like, and maybe even just road too, which we'll kind of hit on this, but are there a lot of mind games that runners play with each other?
I think so at times. Yeah, I think like the biggest thing is just maybe chatting or talking to some extent, because if you're chatting or talking, like you would think theoretically you're going pretty easy. So I have had marathons and other times where like you kind of say a joke or you say something like, "Oh man, like when is the real race going to pick up?" Or something like that. I feel like sometimes you hear comments like that, or stuff where people will just it's just like that sly comment maybe that you're like, "Oh, they're feeling really good," or I don't know. It's also like the mind's also convincing yourself. So like I think sometimes maybe if you're chatting or saying stuff like that, you're also like maybe telling yourself introspectively like, hey, I'm feeling good, or this is easy kind of thing. So
Yeah, yeah. Do you do a lot of self-talk while you're out there? Like, you
yeah,
know,
I mean, yeah, I think it's like just a constant battle. Like every sports psychologist that I've worked with or sports psychology class I've taken, like the amount of negative thoughts that flood our brains and thoughts every day is like insurmountable. I mean, it's just absurd how many times we like automatically have a negative thought when something happens. um and not just in sports, just in life in general. So I think it's just a constant battle, like of combating those thoughts and having those additive statements instead of those subtractive statements. Uh but yeah, the additive and proactive statements I think can go a long way. And I've had multiple experiences in races where like I just have kind of like a catchphrase or a go-to thing, and one of my ones that I've always just used is like look good, feel good, run good. And like look good in the sense of like, hey, my form is like looking really good, I'm looking really smooth. But like, and then I feel great, and look good, feel good, run good kind of thing. So it's something I've repeated, and I've had other mantras that I've said in the past. But yeah, just like various mantras or those very additive power statements that can bring, I feel like, a lot of energy and kind of ground you. And usually I try to look for like 2 to 3 power statements that you have going into a race or a season or whatever it might be.
yeah, no, well, when you said look good, I thought you were talking about the
The hair flow,
hairdo.
yeah. I
Yeah.
always I always clarifying that. I mean, yeah, it's great to look good, I guess, but when you're out there running, sometimes you got spit all over your face or you're not looking so hot anyways. But as long as the form's looking good, we're all good.
No, I think you're looking good, dude. You got some major style points. As someone who's receding in the back of my head, very jealous. Okay, well, cool. Yeah, I guess just I was gonna say I watched the finish line videos. Obviously with trail, there's not really live coverage. You can't like watch a race most of the time. It seems, at least. This is me kind of coming into the sport pretty late, so I'm pretty ignorant. Um, but you seem pretty relieved crossing the finish line. Obviously, I think anyone would be pretty relieved. You've obviously just won. But what were you feeling anything in particular at that moment?
Yeah, I think just like a lot of gratitude. I made like a little post following up the race, just giving my gratitude for God and like this experience and journey I've been on. I've had a lot of friends that have had a lot worse injuries, and they're really struggling, going through a rough go, and it's been maybe multiple months or a year or even more. And mine wasn't drastically long, but I had a battle for about 6 months of just kind of like being injured, a little healthy, injured, or just this repetitive cycle. And going to this race, I definitely had not done like the volume of running that I typically would like to see going into a 50K. Like my longest trail run I did, I think was like 18, 19 miles. And then I'm running 30 miles. And I did like simulate more time on feet where like you're just out there like more about the same amount of time, because obviously you can do an 18, 19 mile run, but if you're doing a lot more vert, you'll be out there longer.
Yeah.
But outside of, since I wasn't able to run a ton, I just supplemented a lot of bike and arc trainers. So I was getting in the volume, but it just wasn't like, that specificity that you typically sometimes want to see in those 50Ks. So I was a little nervous with that, and just combating all that. And I've had a few 50Ks that have gone pretty poorly. Now I'm, I guess, 2 for 4 on the 50Ks. So I added another check mark to the good side there. So the 50K is a little hard for me. I think once I get to that 3.5 hour time on feet, sometimes I just have things just kind of get a little weird. It's something I need to work on a little bit more. So yeah, just a lot of relief and gratitude. And I think just super stoked to be able to cross that finish line. And see like the hard work pay off and the dedication to those cross training, and just like the belief that like, hey, I could do this. Um, and just seeing those reaffirmations come through. So
Yeah, I mean, this was something that I forgot to mention kind of in that preamble about the race, was that you were coming off an injury, uh, and it was at least severe enough to keep you out of Boston because you had to drop out of Boston. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I had a few different things, but Boston, I ended up getting a stress reaction in the left shin, and then as I was slowly trying to build to get back up for this 50K, like my right shin was really bothering me. And actually, like I think like 3 weeks before the race, I ended up getting an MRI because I was like, I think I got another stress reaction. Like it felt just like my other one. And I was pretty discouraged. I also got super sick that same week. So it was like a double whammy. I think I was just like feeling bad for myself and just kind of sulking in it. And I was like, oh, dude, I got another stress reaction. I was like, I'm almost sure of it and I'm sick. And then the MRI came back and I had just strained my post hip. So it was giving me a lot of like similar symptoms as a typical stress reaction would. So that was great because the bone wasn't hurt and I was a little worried about that. But then I had to kind of solve the post hip stuff, and then after the post tib was like slowly getting better, it was like still kind of bothering me, but it was slowly progressing. Then all of a sudden, like my left Achilles flared up like 2 weeks out from the race and it got really bad. And so I think my body was just compensating. Like I was worried about putting too much pressure on my left shin originally. So then I strained my post tib on my right side. Then my right side post tib was bothering me. So I was like compensating maybe more on my left side than my Achilles. So just probably like a back and forth compensation, just like unintentionally, like, just running a little different. But super grateful that things ended up working out. Like there's definitely times where like you kind of have that doubt in the back of your mind, like, okay, like, am I not supposed to do this race? Why do things keep kind of going left and right? But felt really confident that God wanted me to go out to the race, and like I should still give it a shot. And I went out there and was able to kind of manage everything and keep those niggles under control, and ended up working out. So
Yeah, I was gonna say like that must have been kind of a mental challenge to one be injured and just coming back from injury in general, and like you're saying, your body kind of has to learn how to trust itself again, and then you're maybe doing some compensating. There's some back and forth injuries. Did you have expectations going into the race, or was it just like, I mean, did you look at the field and say like I actually have a pretty decent chance, or was it just anything can happen and I just need to show up and see what happens on race day?
yeah, I didn't look at the field too much. Well, I didn't, but then I had a friend that was informing me on all the people, kind of giving me the inside scoop, and he was definitely coming from like a good place. But sometimes I prefer just to not get caught up in the weeds, like control the controllables. Like who cares in it? Who cares who is in the race, so to speak? Like regardless of like whether they're way better or like on paper way better than me, like their maybe UTMB index score is way better or worse or whatever. Like I've just done too many races where like regardless of what their UTMB or ITRA index is, like people can have amazing days and people can have bad days. So I just try not to get caught up into that too much. But then I had a friend that was kind of like, oh, hey, you should watch out for this guy. He's like the French up down trail champ. This guy ran in the Paris Olympics in the marathon. He's a road guy trying some trail stuff. This guy like runs for this professional brand and he's done this and that, like so like I was aware of some of the people. I didn't know necessarily like who they were. Like I didn't know the face to the name, so to speak, but I did know some of the people coming in. But ultimately I just realized like, hey, like if I do my thing and I run my race and I'm smart about it, I think like I can qualify regardless. Um, and ultimately, some of the people that were going to be there, one of them didn't end up showing up to the race, and then another one dropped out early in the race, didn't finish the race. So, like, um, yeah, like it. I mean, it just kind of goes back to like you never know who's going to be there or what day they're going to have. So, but yeah, I had a little bit of like kind of feedback on, or a little what do you call that? Scoping out of the
Yeah,
race and
some like
contenders. Yeah.
reconnaissance work. Yeah, and like you say, it's probably hard because like in some ways you want to know, like there's like some level of detail of there's a nice to know, but there's so many data points that are your own data points going into this race that are like, I'm just worried about making sure that I'm okay. And
Yeah.
I know that I actually struggled with that in my first half Ironman. We did it as a group of friends, and I recognized halfway through the swim that I was like far too concerned with where my friends were, and like one of my friends like early in the swim um, had some type of reaction with the salt water and like had to go over to a kayak, and it's like I saw that and I popped up out of the water and I'm like, are you okay? And it's like he's fine, right? Like just
Yeah.
just they have a whole staff of people pretending to him, just go run your own race. And, it took me halfway through the swim to realize that I just was, yeah, it was my first time. And I was maybe just trying to be, too concerned with things that just I can't control at all.
Yeah, and I think that's like a big thing I've learned with all the sports psychology I've done over the years is like there's a point where you're just expending energy and stress on things that you can't control that aren't within your realm of control. And so like yeah, like you can't control who's going to show up or what race they're going to have or how they're going to be feeling or what training they've done versus what you've done. But one thing I always missed from like high school, I think I had spurts of it where I lost it and kind of tried to regain it, and I had moments where I regained that in college and also in trail running. But I love to kind of run with just a curiosity, or kind of like an innocence, so to speak, of like you just don't really know who's in the race, and not for a lack of like respect for the other people, but like one thing I loved about high school is like I didn't really care who was in the race, and not because I didn't respect them, but like I just showed up and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna try to go win. Like I don't care who's in it. And then like ultimately after the race, you'd have like a friend like, oh my gosh, dude, that guy that set this record for blah 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 was there, and he's like the best in the country, or whatever it might have been. And I was like, well, if I'd known that before the time, I might have been like so hyper focused and freaking out and expending so much anxiety and stress over it that I probably wouldn't have ran as well. So I think it's nice to have that kind of innocence and curiosity going into races sometimes, where just not to get caught up in those weeds or those uncontrollables. So,
Well, it's true. Like we all tend to get mired down by details that don't matter, right? Like, and maybe yeah, let these things subconsciously impact us. Speaking kind of about maybe your high school and collegiate days, from what I can tell, and based on some of the conversations you and I have had offline, it seems like your career, at least like your the latter half of your collegiate career, was pretty impacted by a number of setbacks. Whether that be injury or sickness, but it also seems like you've done a really good job bouncing back from adversity with some incredible performances. Is that the right read on that?
yeah, I mean, I've tried to make the most out of everything. Like it's hard in the moment. I feel like sometimes to be grateful or understanding of the circumstance when things don't go your way. But that's one thing I've really tried diligently, is just to try to seek God's hand, and try to better be accepting of like what has happened when it doesn't go your way. Because I've had times where like I've been injured and being able to come back and have a great performance to maybe finish All American, or run a PR or do whatever it might be, or qualify for a US team. And then, like, oddly enough, a couple months later, I'm injured again, or I'm like having the worst track season of my life because I have some weird fatigue I can't figure out, and my heart rate's spiking, or whatever it might be. So, um, yeah, I think that's like just kind of a part of life in general, though, is like it has its ebbs and flows, and its ups and downs, and just trying to be grateful for all those, the highs and the lows. So,
Yeah, it seems like yeah, you're using obviously your faith as part of managing that acceptance process. You're using gratitude. Is there anything else that you find really helps you a lot with managing those? I don't know if it's expectations or just yeah, just the acceptance process of I can't control everything.
yeah, sorry, that was my cute little daughter chirping in. Maybe you heard her.
That's all good.
But I think, yeah, I think my faith is a big thing I try to lean on. Obviously, like it's easier when things are going your way, to have that faith and like that gratitude for things. But I've learned like the cool thing is like I feel like there's so many historical stories in the scriptures and various things of people that have had things go poorly and still had a great attitude, a great outlook on it. So I try to emulate the best I can. But I also think having other things that ground you can really go a long way. Like I try to not make running like the only priority or the only thing in my life. Like I have a beautiful wife and beautiful kids that are really important to me. I like to golf. I like to play pickleball. I like to do other things outside of just running. I have a job, like ultimately, like if running could like be done for me tomorrow, like you never know when the last moment's going to be. And so like if it's like you're all or nothing, then like your life could be, I mean, over, so to speak, if you really put all that energy and maybe energy is not the right word, but like all your stones in one basket. So like it's as important as it is to me, it's I realize like it's not the most important thing in my life. And like there's other things that bring me a lot of joy and purpose in my life. And so I try to have a balanced life and a balanced energy around it, because I think when you put too much energy and too much focus into that, it actually just becomes unhealthy, and you actually become, ironically, I think, just like a worse runner to an extent. Like, and I'm not saying like, oh yeah, don't be diligent in all the things that are going to make you a good runner. Like, stop, doing strength and core and stability and mobility or whatever it might be. But I think having a little more balanced approach and not being like, oh, like I have to be focused on running 24/7. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I tend to really love podcasts, and there's a new podcast. I think it's out just this year from one of the legends in triathlon, Jan Frodeno, and his podcast is quite good. And that's actually one of the themes that comes up a lot in his show, where he's talking to people who have done extraordinary things within athletics, and it seems to be a theme of can you get to the pinnacle without being hyper obsessed? But then at the same time, like what you're saying, allow yourself to also have a dynamic personality so that when you're hurt or, you can't do that thing anymore, you don't have this identity crisis.
yeah,
And, I forget who it was, but they have this framework of like, you need to have like mental rooms. And so like there's the athlete room, which maybe is bigger for you right now, but then there's the father, there's the husband, there's the, like you said, you run a local running store. So you're an entrepreneur. There's a room for that, and they ebb and flow in size. So it's really an interesting concept of, yeah, what we allow room for mentally, emotionally. There's only so much time in the day, which is ultimately, kind of the premise of this podcast is how is the everyday athlete balancing arguably more than what a professional athlete has to balance. I'm talking like, if that's like the only thing you're doing is training and you don't have a partner or, you don't have children, it's quite hard to balance it all. And so that's actually one of the things that I was going to kind of talk to you about. And maybe we just jump into that now is how are you balancing all of those roles within your life? Like I said, you're a professional runner. You also run a local running company, the Runner's Corner. If you're local in Utah, it's a great shop. And you're a husband. You're a father of it's 4 children, right?
yeah.
So and I'm sure there's other things about yourself, but that's a lot to balance. How do you find balance in that?
Ultimately, I don't know if it comes down to me. I think just surrounding yourself with greatness, like surrounding yourself with great people that can support and facilitate and help you achieve those goals. Like I have an amazing staff and other part owners that help facilitate and run the running store when maybe I have to be a little bit more focused on myself and my family and running because I'm off in Europe for a month racing or whatever it might be. And my wife is amazing person. She just does it all. I feel like super supportive and helpful and encouraging, and has been there all along me from day one. And I think meeting in college and both of us being collegiate athletes, like we understand the importance of running. And we ended up having a honeymoon baby, so we had like a little baby that we carried around for like his first 2 years of his life. He went on so many flights all across the country to track and cross country meets. And so we've always had to kind of balance, I guess, like having a little one along with us. And obviously, it's not the most optimal for recovery or for prep before a race if you have kids on your lap on a big long flight or whatever it might be, waking up to help like nurse the baby or stuff like that. The other just stresses that come with just having a funny little crazy ball of energy running around. But like we try to make it like like I mentioned, like running is really important to me and I focus a lot of energy, but it's not the most important thing to me. And we just booked like our flights to Europe this year for like a month trip that we have. And ideally, like for the 3 races I have out there that are really important, like yeah, I'd be a lot less stress and I'd be able to focus a lot more and get a lot better recovery and la di la di la if I just went solo. But like I don't want to be away from my family for 4 to 5 weeks. And we really have a great time and just memories that are like unforgettable. And I think those are the things that like our kids are going to remember. They're not going to remember what toys we bought them when they were 5 or 6, but like the memories we made and the cool places we were able to see. And so I think just having amazing support crew, like my parents have helped and come and fly to races, and I've had siblings come and support and help with the kids, and amazing coworkers and family members and friends and like coaches, PT, physio, like it goes on and on and on. And like, yeah, I couldn't do it by myself, and it takes a village, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, I think that's like often the underrated side of the performance, right? Is like even just your own family, there's a toll or a price or a sacrifice. I don't know how most people want to frame that, but there is a trade-off that's made when you're dedicated to something, and so they get to enjoy, or they get to go through that process with you. And I actually think that it's a very beautiful thing that you bring your family with you. You know, like you say, who knows if it impacts you negatively, but in the long run, I think that that's just a really beautiful thing. And so good on you for doing that.
Thanks.
Um, Similar question. You split your time somewhat between trail and road. You know, you're not a typical runner in that sense where most people are kind of doubling down in one of those disciplines. How do you balance being kind of a, it's similar, but there are differences. How are you balancing being a trail and a road racer?
Yeah, ultimately, I think if you want to be really good at the trails, you need to incorporate speed a lot more. And you're just seeing that as the trails are getting faster and faster. But I think just with the varying speed changes that happen in trails, when you're climbing, it's a bit slower pace. You could be running 10-minute mile pace. It could be even slower than that, depending on the gradient and whatnot. But then all of a sudden you hit a flat, it flattens out, and you got to have that quick speed to kind of change that turnover, and then maybe you have a super fast downhill. And so speed has always been something I've incorporated in my training. So I try to maintain at least one speed session out of my 2 or 3 fast or harder sessions I do a week throughout trail season. And then there's also like more races where maybe I'm a little more speed focused. Maybe I'll do two of my big sessions doing flat speed, and then a long run out in the mountains, depending on the course and terrain of the race I'm getting ready for. But vice versa, I also feel like just the hills play a lot of help or give a lot of help and strength to running on the roads. Like ultimately when it comes down to marathons and like maybe track stuff, like you have to have that pace work done to like just know your that muscle memory of like, hey, I need to run 450 per mile pace for X amount of time or whatever it could be. um, so that's really important, but I also think there's an added strength that really comes to just doing uh hills and stuff. Like hills are like one of the best ways to increase your efficiency and your power output and neuromuscle recruitment of things. And it's really low impact, like higher strain on those muscles because of the forces put onto the muscles, but like really low impact. So it goes a long way. And I've had multiple times in college where like over the summer you don't do as much speed work. You kind of just do a bulk mileage session, or sorry, a bulk mileage training block where you just kind of slog in miles to get ready for cross. And then as you get closer to cross towards the end of summer, you start doing some more speed sessions. But in the summer, I would always do these like challenge trail runs where I'd run up to peaks or mountains or whatever. And honestly, I felt like the fitness translated super well once I started doing those speed sessions. I was like, oh, this feels way easier than I expected, even though I haven't been touching anywhere near the paces are. It's just I felt like I built that aerobic engine, and so I had the capacity to be able to take on those quicker speeds.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and that was one of the questions that I had was, how well does the training translate from one to the other? Um, I'm not much of a trail runner myself. I've only recently started running on some of the trails around. But yeah, it really is one fun to kind of feel like maybe it's a little bit more adventurous, but
Uh-huh.
they're different feel
Yeah,
for
they
sure.
are. Yeah, I love them. They're great. I feel like they make the runs go by quick. And I think also just in general with how injury prone runners are, like if you can get one third of your your runs, at least on soft surface, it can really go a long way. And there's the variation, modulation, and change of directions and trails can really help to kind of work some of those stabilizing muscles and help strengthen them. So
Yeah, it's interesting too. One of the things I'd be curious, and maybe this is something that's like not even on your radar in this same way, but obviously there's an expiration to, performing at the highest levels on road, right? Like someone's just always going to be a little younger, they're going to be a little faster, and as an endurance athlete, you do kind of at some point age out. And endurance sports is kind of nice because you can age out a lot later than in some of the other, at least Olympic sports, right? Like gymnastics, it's like you're 16, you're old.
yeah.
Not quite, right? But it's just that kind of is what it seems like. Whereas with running, age and experience actually come to your benefit. And then especially with trail running, when you look at gosh, I'm blanking on it, but like the last couple winners of some of these big trail races, they're over 40, right? And it's kind of a seasoned athlete who's winning these races. Do you feel like in some ways that gives you an advantage to at some point your road career will kind of end, but then you're going to have a longer tail career opportunity on the trail side?
Yeah, I think that's a really cool and nice thing, and I also think you're seeing a lot of just older athletes on the roads even kind of push those boundaries. Like, I mean, the most recent person to mention is just like Kipchoge, like the goat of the roads. Like seeing him honestly being in his peak until like he was 39, 40-ish. Like I'm like, okay, I'm like 28, like I got 11 more years, like that's
Yeah.
at least two more marathon Olympic trials cycles left in me, or so to speak, or almost even three possibly, so like I think in the past it's kind of like, oh, in the marathon, once you start getting like above like 30, it's kind of like, oh, maybe you're kind of done. But like you're seeing that in a lot of athletes that are starting to have some of their best races late into their career. And it's cool, like just in our area in Provo, like Kira D'Amato has been out here training with us, and she set some of the master records and even got some of the American records later into her career starting. And you're seeing that with all kinds of people. I feel like Sarah Hall is another U.S. athlete that you're seeing that, and I'm sure there's all kinds of people I'm just going to skip over, but those are just a few people that come to mind that are still pushing the limits and still running amazing, and they're getting right around the age of 40, give or take. So
Yeah, it's encouraging for all athletes, I think, to realize that your the like peak performance is extending, and maybe peak performance just means different things over time. And yeah, some really cool books about that that I've been consuming lately. Uh, Speaking of LA 2028, so you're qualified for the Olympic trials for the marathon. And if I'm not mistaken, again, I had to do some internet sleuthing on this because I wasn't kind of following I would say the lay person isn't following the trials and like what's qualifying people so much as focusing on the Olympics when the Olympics happen. So it seems like you qualified for that back in 2023 with your performance in California. Is that the right race where you qualified for the trials?
uh, that one I think would have qualified me for the trials for Paris.
Okay, for
Yeah,
Paris.
I'm not sure exactly when the window opened, but I am qualified. I think that actually the window for 2028 LA, I think that opened up. It was like right around New York City or Chicago. So last year in like October-ish or November-ish was when the window opened. So my race at CIM last December qualified me for the race for the Olympic trials.
Okay, I guess that's the race that I was trying to find the results on, and for whatever reason I couldn't find it. But I think the circumstances around that CIM race were quite unique, around the fact that this is the race that you didn't get your nutrition, right?
Yeah, the first time I ran it, yeah, there was like a little
Okay.
mishap. I'm not sure exactly what even had happened. It's something like you kind of got to plan for, because there's been probably multiple athletes that have had their bottles put on the wrong aid station. Someone accidentally took their bottles. their bottle. Maybe they put their bottles in the wrong box the night before at the drop off station. There's so many things that could go wrong. Even though it's fantastic that these races provide it for their elite athlete entries, the I learned the hard way, but I learned, hey, you need to have some backup options just in case. So
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe can you just go into that story now that I've teased it up? I've obviously mixed my facts on what happened when, but I just thought that that was like a really interesting story that you had told me again offline. Yeah, kind of around the circumstances of that, and maybe just how has that experience prepared you mentally and even just logistically for future races?
yeah. So long story short, like my bottles just weren't appearing where they were supposed to. And I didn't find a bottle until after the half marathon. It showed up at like mile 13.5. Finally, my bottles were like popping up on the tables they were supposed to be. So I led the race from like mile one until mile 23-ish or so. Uh, and I ended up blowing up eventually just because I didn't have the fuel I needed earlier in the race. But my bottle started showing up around mile 13. And I came through the half on pace for like a 209.40, which was my debut. And back in 2023, I feel like that was like a pretty solid time. Like that would have put me, had I finished the time I was supposed to, I think going to the Olympic trials, I would have been like maybe fifth or sixth best time. And now, the times are absurdly fast. They just keep getting faster, which is super exciting. But anyways, had I finished that, like I would have been in a really good spot. But fast forward in the race, like I was in such race mode. I turned a corner, and then I personally missed the aid station at mile 16 or something, where to grab my bottle, like just in my peripheral as I was racing, there was me and another guy that had broken away from the pack. So it was just us two down, just down to us two. I turned the corner. I was like, oh crap! Like I think that was the aid station. And sure enough, it was. Like I wasn't gonna turn around and grab it. So then the next one I got was at like mile 20. So I got one at 13 and a half, then one at mile 20. And I got a little bit of fuel. And then like before I got my bottle at mile 23 or 24, like I was like, holy cow. Like that was like my first non sub 5 minute mile. I think mile 23, I was like 5:15s or something. And I ended up fading from being on pace to like 2:10, 2:09 to like finishing 2:15 flat. And
Which is
some of the
still
most
incredible.
oh, thanks. Yeah, it was yeah, some of the most painful miles. I got done with the race and I was like, those 3 miles hurt like 10 million times more than like the first 22 miles did or something. Like I think you get to that point and your body is just like so calorie depleted and like low blood sugar that like by the end I was getting like tunnel vision and I was just like so slow and I was like trying everything I possibly could to move my muscles and I was like, oh, it just hurt. But I ended up getting the Olympic trials time still, which was a big relief. And then I was just trying to get ready for Orlando, which was 2 months after that.
Yeah, and maybe like that kind of experience again, while in the moment is so far from something that you would wish upon yourself ever. But maybe that's why masters athletes, the experienced athlete does so well because like you said, you know, you took some lessons from that. And so am I understanding correctly that you'll always have a gel in your pocket type of thing?
Yeah, that and I have a good awareness. I don't know why like I didn't in the race. I should have just been like grabbing at least the goos that they had for the general aid or the water or something, but like maybe it's just a rookie mistake. My first time, I was like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'll be like, I'll wait for the next one. My bodies will be there." And then it just kept like not there, not there, not there, and then till it was kind of too late. Because in the marathon, it's like you can miss some of those later bottles, but like if you're not fueling in the early stages, you can never backlog that. Like you can never get those calories that you're going to need later. At that point, you're already like in the red. So it definitely taught me like, hey, like have some gels, have some backup plans, know where the other like general aid stations are. Like if things don't happen, like grab that stuff. Don't be just twiddling your thumbs hoping that it's gonna appear next aid station. So yeah, and it taught me
Yeah.
also like the nice thing about that was I had the confidence of like, hey, like I didn't end up running a 209 that day, but like I know I am like a 209 guy or like whatever, like I was like, okay, I know I can do this. Now it's just like let's dial in that nutrition plan and keep building on this fitness. So
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely. have had similar experiences in that like there's a lesson to be learned about how to fuel in a race. Obviously, I'm just an everyday guy, right? So I'm not racing for podiums, but in my second Ironman 70.3 race, I had like a loaded race belt when it came to the half marathon part. I had like loaded a race belt ahead of the race and carried it with me, but then I ended up having some GI issues where I just could not, like I had one of my gels during the bike and it upset my stomach so bad that I couldn't like even think about having another gel. And they were all the ones that were that I carried with me like the whole race. And I basically like learned the same lesson, right? Like, okay, I'm never going to carry a race belt like that again, where it was just kind of bouncing around, all this dead weight. And you're doing this mental calculus in the race where like looking back, I should have just grabbed all of them and thrown them in the garbage because they were just such a distraction.
Uh,
And they're just jostling and bouncing around. But in my mind, and I bought them at Runner's Corner, right? In my mind, I was like, I've got, each one of these things are $3-4. Like, I've got all this good stuff for like future training sessions in my pocket. Why am I going to throw them away?
yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyway, lots to be said for. I'm not even going to go there. It's a company that ended up going out of business.
Uh, Live and
But
learn,
anyway,
right?
yeah. But it's like obviously I should have just used the aid stations a little bit better. But you're kind of doing this mental calculus. You're in the race, and yeah, it's like one of those things where you can only learn through the lesson of hard knocks. But
Yeah.
um, so again, going back to the LA 2028 prep. So you're qualified for the trials, and only the top three men, top three women get to go. And I was looking at this earlier this year in April. There's a magazine that published an article with power rankings, right? Who are the top 15 guys, women and men, to watch for who's going to probably qualify. And this, I have no idea how credible this magazine is, but it was interesting. Two of your training partners, Connor Mance and Clayton Young, they're both on the list, number 1 and number 4 respectively. So they have Connor just outside of the 3-person squad, and he ran in Paris. And you're not on that list. Do you pay attention to that kind of stuff, or kind of like we've mentioned earlier? Is that just noise to you? You just don't even care?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of noise. I mean, I've always joked like the three things I'm always grateful for is like God, haters, and my family, like jokingly. Like I think like or doubters is maybe how I put it. I think like sometimes like it's fun to see that just to prove people wrong. And I think respectively, like it's probably makes sense. Like I'm not on that list yet. Like I believe I have a 205, 206 in me. I haven't ran that yet. So I need to, really dial in and get into a race like that. And watching Boston, I was really kicking myself just seeing how fast all the Americans ran at that race. Like it was really hard to watch. And I'm like, man, I wonder what I could have ran in the such like prime conditions with a tailwind, and cool weather and great pacing and a great group to run with. But like, hey, that's the past. Like you can't change that. So looking to the horizon, like I want to get into a fast race, have some good pacers and see what I can run. And I know if I like put myself out there and keep doing the training that I've been doing, like I know I can give myself a shot. And as long as I believe in that, like I don't really care what the rankings say. Like I just know I got to believe in myself and put in the work, and the rest of it will play out. So
Yeah, curious to how you keep yourself motivated, right? So some people really use things like that as a chip on their shoulder, and whether they actually do this or not, they're printing it off, they're putting it on, they're putting it somewhere, and they're like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And some people, like maybe you've kind of alluded to earlier, right? I'm going to just approach this curiously, and I'm gonna maybe put some blinders on intentionally, and just it's not about them, it's about me. um, yeah, how do you motivate yourself? Do you like being an underdog? Do you like just, I don't know, like how you view yourself and how you keep yourself motivated?
yeah, I think having goals is a really big thing. Like having goals, but then writing those down and writing an action plan on how to get there, and then having people that keep you accountable. Because those that write goals and then have people that are able to keep them accountable are like way more successful in achieving those goals than people that don't write anything down and don't let people know. Because when things get hard, and inevitably they are going to some extent, whether it's an injury or a setback or whatever it could be, like it's easy to throw those goals in the trash if no one knows about them. But if you have people keeping you accountable and it's like, hey, like you're injured, this injury could be done in a week, it could go on for 6 weeks or 3 months or whatever it might. But like if you don't have that motivation to like, hey, I'm gonna give it my all and work really hard to still get to that goal, like it's easy just to give up. So that's something I've had in the past. And one of my first experiences of like becoming an All-American in college after, I guess on paper, no one would have expected that from the times I ran in high school, is like I started going around my house and writing like uh reaffirmations or statements of like, hey, joking like in the mirror, to be like, hey, check out that All American, or like best kick in the NCAA, like, or no one can hang with me the last kilometer, or like whatever it was. And like that year in the race, like I never lost any positions like the last 2K of a cross country race. I always like caught people. And I ended up finishing All American, even though like no one would have expected. Like I think believing that. So like I just have simple things I try to do. Like I haven't done as many recently, but like my passcode to like my phones would be like my next marathon goal time, whether it's like I don't know, it could be like 0209 or 0205 or whatever, like, like those different things you want to achieve. And then as you do it, you just kind of adjust and change. And like in my house, like I might have statements around like future Olympian or like, stuff like that. And I think as you see those and you're constantly repeating them and seeing them, like they you start to believe them and then they become fact, like even before they maybe have become fact. Like I think the biggest thing is believing and trusting and knowing you can do it. And if you have that belief, eventually it becomes reality. So
No, I love that. I've always been a big goal person. I've kind of always been geared toward, having a list of things I want to accomplish, and like you say, putting them on a list, writing them physically, trying to break it down into digestible pieces, and like actually make it happen. One of the things that I've been having to learn over time is how to set goals, right? Like there are certain goals that are just so far outside of your control, and it's something that we've talked about, right? Like even earlier in this podcast, is they're just things that you show up to a race ready, your nutrition isn't put on the table, and so it's really hard to control the outcome. How specific do you get with your goals? And this was actually a question that I asked Clayton earlier this week, where like I'm wondering if it's different for a professional to set goals versus an amateur, because where my thought on this is for me, I'm only competing against myself, and if I wanted to try to be competitive, I'm competing against everyone else in my age group, but there's a lot of people in my age group. Whereas professionally, I don't know the size of field, but it's like really you're only competing against. I shouldn't say only. You're competing against just a smaller field. And so, are you able as a professional to set more specific goals based on one, your ability, your physical ability is totally different than an amateur, but also just who you're competing with and the size, and does that make sense?
yeah, I think there's still that possibility. Like while the number might be only 20 or 30 people, you're really competing against compared to like a mass group of thousands of people that are in the 30 to 35 group or whatever it could be, like I still think uh, you have that competitive edge, but I also think on top of that, like the nice thing about running is while there's a lot of people to compete against, there's also that quantitative side of things of like, hey, I want to run this time, I want to do this, and I try to focus. Well, it depends on the race, but I try to focus on a little bit of both depending on the style of race, because sometimes you could be like, hey, like I want to run, I'm going to swing for the fences. I want to run like 204 or 205 or whatever it could be. You may run 205 that day, but you may be in the race where two guys go sub 2 hours and you're like, well, shoot, like, like, I'm definitely not going to be running sub 2 hours anytime soon. So, I think it's nice because you can still achieve your goals without being too hyper focused on others and what others are doing. Because ultimately there's going to be someone that might just be having the craziest day ever and set a world record. And that doesn't really diminish what you did if you have those goals set and you swung for the fences and achieved what you were supposed to. So
No, that is helpful. I think just kind of keeping that perspective is pretty helpful. Okay, well, what's next for you this year? So obviously LA 2028 is pretty far out, but like what's next this year? What are the things that you can focus on now that are within your control? And yeah.
you ready? It's a long lit. No, I got a lot of trail races. It gets pretty busy in the summer for me. So I got a little local race in Park City called Twisted Fork next week. And then the week after, I'm out in New Hampshire for a US up down champs on the trails. And then the week after, maybe there's 2 weeks after that, or a week after that, I'm out in Broken Arrow for of two races I have out there, a VK and a 23K. And then I think I got like 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks off. And then I have a little local race up at Snowbird for the Cirque Series, which are super fun. July is a little bit of a down month for me, which is nice. It actually tends to shake up that a lot of years for some reason, which is super nice. I usually only have like one race in July, so I can get a lot more just kind of training block and refocus. But then August, I head out. I got a race in Austria, then Switzerland, then France/Switzerland, and then I come home and then kind of right back at it again. I go over to Japan, China, and then I think Canada, hopefully over to Canada, and then Korea, and then come home, and then a little race in Moab, the U.S. half marathon trail champs, and then hopefully a marathon in December. I'm trying to figure out which one I can get into and which one will give me a good opportunity to run a fast time. So
Yeah, I mean that sounds like quite the schedule. I was just going to ask where there's room for a more of a yeah, time trial for, maybe getting yourself on that top 15 list, that watch list of what's Christian capable of on the road.
yeah,
So
yeah, hoping for that December one. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. I'm trying to figure out what's a good time because I think I will most likely do Boston in April. So I like to try to do a marathon in December, January, but I want to get to a race that will be fast and give me an opportunity to run a fast time. Um, and so it's trying to figure out what makes sense with that schedule, but also December is nice because I have such a long it's a long season for me. Like I usually start racing in May or so, and I go all the way until December. So it's like a good 7 month long season of racing, racing, racing. Um, and then I take a big, just kind of reset break, and then start getting ready for the second marathon of the season in that April timeframe. But the hard part about doing a race in December is like, yeah, I'm really fit and I have that trail fitness and I still maintain that road speed, but a lot of times for those marathons, it's like nice just to click off like a good 12 to 10 week block of like marathon specific training. So it's something I'm trying to balance out of like figuring like, hey, like can I get in a race where I can really run a fast time, like a 205 or something, and have that muscle memory trained of like running those paces on such a short build. Like my fitness will be there, but like that specificity of pace work, I won't have as much time to touch up on. So
yeah, I mean it definitely is not relatable to me what you're doing, but it sounds like quite the challenge. Yeah, that you're gonna have a very busy season. I'm excited to follow it and maybe have you back on to speak to how it's going at a later time. My last question for you is what advice would you give to the everyday athlete trying to improve in endurance sport, right? Whether that be 5K, 10K, half, full marathon, the ultras, I guess triathlon, right? Like there's a number of endurance sports. What would you tell that athlete trying to get better?
yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I feel like there's a lot of things you can focus on, and it's really hard to figure out which ones are most important or which mean the most. But I think if there's like three things, let's see, maybe three things that I think are most important is like dialing in your sleep. Like sleep is you won't get the benefits of what you're doing. Like you won't do if you do harder workouts, bigger weights, more training XYZ, you'll never reap those blessings unless you focus on eating more, sleeping more, and I think just recovery, which kind of goes in that sleep eat kind of category. So it's kind of like two ish three. I think the third one kind of envelops those first two, but I think sleeping and eating are the most important. And there's a super cool study I found, kind of on. They focused mostly on endurance sport athletes, and I don't know the exact metrics. I'd have to go back and read it again. But like they talked about the amount of recovery or the amount people slept and how often or the percentage they were likely to get injured. And it was like they did it like from 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours up to 10. And five to six was pretty similar. 9 to 10 was pretty similar, but like there was big jumps. Like if people slept like 6 hours, like the chances of them getting injured was like 70%. People that
Mm.
went to like 7 hours, it like jumped roughly down to like maybe 58%. People that got like 8 hours, it dropped all the way down to like 40 something percent. And 9 hours was like the golden one. It was like a 20 something percentage or something like that. And so that 9 hours, like kind of that golden rule I really look for. Like I don't have the luxury of like always being able to take a nap every day, just because I usually am working. There's maybe a day a week where I get to do that a little bit more. So I try to really get like that 9 hours at night, because that's the big main important bulk of sleep. But then the other thing I think is just eating a ton, like fueling during workouts, fueling after, fueling before. Like my coach David Roche is all about like high carbs and high energy bioavailability stuff like that. Like that's why we're seeing these fast times, is that you need to fuel that engine to be able to, achieve those goals. So that's really important. And then I think the other recovery things, like when I say general recovery, maybe like just pick one thing and maybe to add on to that. Like, so maybe if you haven't been doing massage or you haven't been doing ankle/hip stability, do that. Or if you haven't been doing weights, add weights into that. Weights, I guess, isn't recovery, but maybe weights would be the third thing I'd throw in there. Weights in recovery, but like weights are super important. So if you haven't been doing weights, try to do some strength training to some extent. I just kind of pick one more thing to throw onto that and add it to kind of make your three things you're focusing on.
No, I love that. I think that's the hardest part, honestly. Like I'm in that group of someone who's trying to get better at endurance sports. I have a goal to run, or at least be fit enough to run a half Ironman at a sub 5:30 pace. And I have two little children, and so the sleep thing is difficult because, and you get it, right? You have four kids. They end up in my bed every night pretty much,
Uh-huh.
and they sleep horizontally, and so both my wife and I end up consigned to these slivers of the bed, with a little kid breathing on your face, kicking you in the face, like, and so quality sleep is hard to come by. And then I always joke too that on recovery days I'll go do a long run, right? For me, it's like maybe a 10-mile run, and then I get home and I should recovering, but recovery for me looks like another 15,000 steps because I need to mow my lawn. I need to go to Costco. I need to help my wife with any number of things, help my
Uh-huh.
children, go to the park, do all these different things. And so by the end of the day, like I'm just gassed. I'm not sleeping probably as well as I should. And then, to your point about nutrition, I'm actually really curious about this. I would say that probably most every athlete, everyday athlete, is completely underfueled, even on simple training runs. What's a good rule of thumb? Like, what should we be bringing? How much water? How much like gels should we be bringing? And what's the threshold? Is it a 30-minute run? Anything above 30 minutes, like you should fuel, or is it
Yeah.
like it doesn't matter? Just fuel always.
My kind of rule of thumb, and you could even be maybe even a little more aggressive on it, but I just feel like there gets to a certain point where it's like, hey, everyone doesn't have a bajillion dollars to be like, buying fuel all the time. But I try to do at least 60 grams of calories, if I'm ever going 60 minutes or more. So it's usually somewhere, I usually end up consuming about 60 to 90 grams per hour, on the ratio. So if I go 90 minutes, I'm just kind of, 90 minutes is pretty typical for me. 90 minutes to 100 minutes is about how I do a lot of my normal runs. It's usually somewhere between 11 and 13 miles. And then maybe I'll double in the evening. which is usually about 45 minutes. And on those doubles, I don't bring stuff because it's usually just 6 miles or so, and I do about 45 minutes. But whenever I'm going an hour, I make sure I'm bringing some kind of fuel. So
Okay. Well, I don't know if this is a good fuel or not, but I did see the TikTok or trend or Instagram trend about nerd clusters. So I've been running with nerd clusters because, like you say, like at some point the budget just doesn't. I can't have a gel every single
yeah,
time. But
yeah. No, I think ultimately, if you can find something that you stomach well and it's going to give you those quick calories and you have a high oxidative rate with it, like the more the merrier. So yeah, I definitely know a lot of friends that like gummies, nerd clusters, fruit snacks, you name it.
yeah, well, this is really good advice. Well, thank you, Christian, so much for coming on the show. Yeah, rooting for you this season, and yeah, just thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Nate. It's been super fun chatting with you.
Thank you for listening to the Racing Time podcast. If you liked today's episode, please rate, leave a comment, follow, and share the show with a friend. This is greatly appreciated. This week's kudos go to McCall Madsen for signing up for her first Ironman 70.3 race and getting out on her first bike rides. If you would like to come on the show as a featured athlete, have a guest recommendation, or simply would like to connect and or share a major milestone, please email me at nathan@localtriclub.com. I'd also love to connect with you on Strava. Links to my personal pages and the growing local Tri Club community are in the show notes. Music credits are also in the show notes. Thank you, and see you next time.